Welcome back to the Indiewood Podcast, a podcast about indie film and the many hats we wear in order to get those films made. My name is Yaroslav Altunin. I'm a writer, director. I've also been an editor for 15 years. I've shot some stuff. I've been a grip, been a gaffer, been a sound person. I've done a lot of things, and I like talking about those things, and I like talking to folks who are also multi-hyphenates. And with me today for our final episode, I have Gene Gallarano, who is a actor, director, writer, and a producer with an Emmy. How does that feel, by the way, to be an award-winning director with a statue? Sorry, producer with a statue.
I keep it in my bathroom.
It's like
nice and humbling reminder of,
because it's
when you need the door closed and you're all alone with yourself and you're whatever,
because it's a flex for people that come over, but it still keeps you humble because you're like, no, it's in there.
Is it a flex?
Yeah. You
to have in the bathroom?
I don't have a statue.
I kind of thought it was, I don't know. I just thought it was like a kind of humiliating place. So brighten it up or just remind yourself of where you are. I don't know.
Funny story.
They're stupid, those things. Yeah.
Talking about bathroom stuff, things we put in the bathroom. My wife and I were decorating our house. She's like, how about this painting that you have that's wonderful? We'll put it in the bathroom. I'm like, no, it's not bathroom art. And so we have things that we have bought over the course of a couple of years that ends up in the bathroom. We call it bathroom art. And I feel like it's kind of derogatory, but also there is art that belongs in the bathroom.
Well, I think I made a movie. I produced a movie. The musician John Batiste was in it. It's called American Symphony with the director Matt Heineman. Shout outs. And John Batiste said, awards don't validate your art, but I sure would like to win me some. And obviously, but they're for the one I got, I'm very proud of because I think it was a really important film and I think it should be recognized.
And this was for the first wave.
Yeah, and that was a team win and it was a really sweet, everyone on the team got that and it was a really hard win to get that. And but they're also embarrassing. What are you supposed to do with those things? I don't know. Do you show them? Do you not? You put them in the bathroom. It's kind of I want you to see it every Zoom. I don't know. It kind of feels.
I feel like if you have more than one, then you can take it out of the bathroom, right?
I give one of the kids, and they can do whatever the fuck they want with it, and the other one stays in the bathroom. But no, I don't know. I think I heard Kate Winslet has her Oscar in the bathroom.
That's right.
I kind of like that. Yeah. I think she said people can hold it and practice their speeches, which if you think about it is really beautiful. Yeah. Most people aren't going to get one. And if you get lucky enough to be at Kate Winslet's bathroom, maybe you're on a better track. but maybe you get to hold it and look in the mirror and be like, thanks mom. Thanks all my teachers, whatever you would say to, when you're up there and you get your moment. Thank you. TikTok. I don't know what people would say.
You can do that now at the Academy Museum. You can go and they'll record you can hold a real statue and you can record your acceptance speech and they'll send you a video.
Wow.
And it's fun. It's on a green screen.
Have you done it?
My wife's family did and they loved it.
Did they love it?
Yeah. I was
what did they say? You were like, I can't. I'm a filmmaker.
Yeah.
It's too close to home.
It's too real.
It's too close to home.
It's too real. I couldn't do it. It
was like that show. What was that show about the actors that Party Down? Was that? It was they're all a bunch of cater waiters.
Yeah, it was Party Down. Yeah.
And this was I don't know however long ago, and my roommates were watching it. You have to watch it. It's great. And I watched one episode. And I was like, it's too painful.
Yeah,
it's too close to home. I can't watch it. I refuse. So I don't know. I don't know. Those awards things. They're funny. I mean, listen, it's great. I'm very proud of that one because it's a team win and that team earned it and it was such a hard thing and it cost so much for everybody and it was such an immense thing that it deserved it. And so I'm very proud of it regardless of where it sits in anybody's house, and no judgment on anybody and how they do it, but I'm sure up in the Hollywood Hills there's lots of statues and cool places, bouncing light off of them and shit.
Well, getting to the point where you have a statue, I think took a lot of work, a lot of courage, and a lot of trust fall into the opportunity. But then also because of that work you've put in, you've also had the opportunity to work with a lot of amazing filmmakers. And you told me a little bit about this during our prep, where you learned a lot from these icons of the industry. And so I really wanted to dig into that a little bit and learn about what you learned and what you bring to your projects from those experiences. Because you said during the production for The First Wave, you were watching the master class for
Jimmy Chin.
Jimmy Chin.
Jimmy Chin's master class. Everybody check it out.
And then you ended up working for him like a year later.
Yeah. We made a show and we worked a lot together on that one, and it was really cool. And I made another one for Jimmy and Chai and their company.
So what did you learn from Jimmy?
What I learned from Jimmy, unfortunately, I'll never touch being as good at the things that Jimmy is, as good as the things that he's good at. But what I would tell when I'll have young filmmakers, documentarians, etc., come up to me, I'll say, why don't you try, especially like there's a little bit of a doc jock culture in that world where like documentary, like the war journalist kind of idea, let me go to conflict zone, let me get super intense. And there's that's a massive conversation, and I love those people. But the young ones that come up to me and you can see it and they want it, and I'm like, they ask, how do I get a career? And I say, why don't you excel at two things? Like, you got to be great. If you're a shooter, you got to be the best shooter you can be, right? Then why don't you like find one other thing that you're fucking great at and excel at that and marry the two, and that's, you can probably get a career out of that. So like, like a Jimmy Chin, for instance, like he's a master photographer, filmmaker, and he's a world-class, one of the most elite adventure athletes on the planet. I mean, the dude can hike every mountain in the world, has hiked them, and ski down it. He made a career making movies and taking photos in that world, and that's how he broke in. And like, I think that there's a tremendous thing to learn between trying to like come up with a couple areas that you can be masters, so that you're not just, there's a lot of just shooters, right? But what are they shooting? Why don't you bring that into it? So that's like one thing I would take away from like a Jimmy in particular. I mean, I haven't shot anything with, like, I've filmed Jimmy. He's been like the like navigator host type, and obviously shepherded these TV shows, but we haven't like filmed, gone in. I mean, I don't hike mountains. What am I going to do? How am I going to be there? I don't do that. I'm scared of mountains.
What's your secondary? Well, I think I was going to ask you, what's your secondary thing? But you have like 4 things you're good at.
I don't know what my first thing is.
Well, you're an actor and you're pretty good at it.
Maybe I think my grandfather was a salesman. And I talk about with some of my cousins, like we're good at talking to people.
Isn't that what
think
producing is?
And I was like, exactly. I was kind of born for that. My mom used to always be like, you're with the Pied Piper in the neighborhood. And I don't know what that means. She's like, you always had friends, and I did. A lot of people, and I like really liked engaging. And my wife used a great quote for me. She's like, Gene, he's everywhere and nowhere. Like, yeah, those are my 2 things. Like, be everywhere and simultaneously and nowhere, and no one knows what that means. I'm not sure, but it felt really appropriate.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think it means?
Oh, I think it means like understanding the lanes of different components and being willing to do multiples if I have to. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's really nice to just do one thing. Like, it is such a joy to just be an actor in something and not worry about any of the problems that the team has to do. Yeah. And like, if you're a director, you're probably doing a whole bunch of components. If you're a producer, you're obviously across all kinds of things. Like, I'm sure if you're a shooter, I'm sure it's really great to just be a shooter only sometimes.
And when you're all 3, actor, director, and producer, I feel that's even a more immense weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, and it just depends on who the person is. Some people have no interest in that, and that's totally cool. But I would say that's something I learned. I mean, the luxury that I've had when I mentioned like master crafts people and like working with some of these, especially these documentarians the last 4 or 5 years, these documentary filmmakers and their teams are just the best. They've just been the best. And like their world, everybody there is the best at what they do. And so you're taking in if you're an intelligent human being, you're going to look at them and say like, I don't hold cameras, but I'm going to watch these people. And I had a very interesting experience with them. I feel like that was pretty singular in terms of, on that project in particular, I held a boom pole. And if you hold a boom pole for a filmmaker, a verite filmmaker, you're basically dancing with them. And of course, there were times where it wasn't working. Like one of the best, like it's an immense conversation, but you're basically dancing with them in all of these situations where you're filming. And so I'm essentially having to learn about these shooters and almost predict how they're going to move. And so some of them are tall, like there's like Thor and Alex Pritz, they're tall. Ross McDonald's not so tall. They're all phenomenal shooters. They're like the best on the planet at this verite kind of filmmaking
and can shooting. You elaborate more on what the verite style is?
Yeah, I would say the style that those films in particular were like, you wake up with the characters and you leave with them. And when they're asleep, you're there shooting. You got to make sure they're asleep. And
how does that work, by the way? So if someone does like wake up and then go to sleep, how do you is there a little bit of like magic, or do you literally just wait until they fall asleep and you sneak out?
Some filmmakers, some of the best, are like, I'm going to shoot absolutely everything, and that's it. And you just chew into footage, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. I think it depends on situationally and the subjects, and are they going to kick you out, or are they not, and how much kicking out do they have to do before you actually leave? There's a million components. It depends on what the project is. It's all over the place. But I think for me, truly, like, and I was listening, like I'd have one earbud in and I'd have one not out, so I could listen to the room and like listen to other things. And I could listen to what I was doing, which also was a very intense experience. I don't know the last time you've been in a hospital under those circumstances listening to it, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Never, I think, for me.
But but like getting to work with all those shooters and spend hours and hours and hours and days and months with them, you learn how they look at things. And I think that's a really important, like, I learned so much from that. There's no doubt that was really like foundational in a lot of ways of like re-looking at how to shoot stuff and shooting it cinematically and making sure you're there for the like emotion of it, and you capture the information when you have to, or you just figure it out later. But like if you're there for the emotion and like the nuance of how to push into situations, how to push on characters, how to push into really intense moments, and how to push into really soft moments, and like seeing all of the different flavors and levels and techniques that they all use, because they're all different. They all have a different feel. Like I can spot their shots and be like, oh, I know, I've been there. I understand that person. I understand how they shoot and when they would move, and it's it was a really beautiful dance with them. And we were like this little ballet happening amidst this massive
global event
thing happening, and we're just kind of operating in and around it. And there's just so many stories of what I learned from all of those guys and that team, the director, and like it was amazing. And I mean, you take that with you and you call into the next project and you apply that. And like I just worked on this amazing series photographer that Jimmy and Chai were EPs, and the showrunner, shout out Pagan Harleman, she was directed an episode and I was producing it and worked very tightly on it. And it was on this master photographer named Dan Winters. And Dan Winters is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, if not the most intelligent. I love every bit of him. He's just this like beautiful human being, and he's very complex as well. And he builds sets, and he's a master builder, and he thinks about every detail. And so with him, I was really excited to do the thing, because I felt he's a Texan, and like I went and met him, and we just had a lot in common. I felt like a kind of like the Ringer producer going in, and like love his wife. Shout out to Cass, she was amazing. Their son Dylan, and like just phenomenal people, very open. I joked because they were so coachable. I was like, hey, I feel like we need to talk about this, but I don't know how to get us into it. Could you do it? And they were amazing. And they just start a scene. This is a documentary, and they just like, and then it would go off in its own territory. Or with Dan, he was such a master builder. I mean, his whole world is designed, so you're getting this world-class genius production design. But I was like, what if we build the sets that you're going to do the master interviews, and we'll film you building the sets, and this will all be a part of it. And I think that just kind of like the style and the subject found their voice of the episode. And I'm so proud of it, because it's singular in that capacity, and it has world-class components to it. And it was so much to where with him, and we had a great DP, Michael Cromit, and I would say, Dan, we're going to shoot this direction, and I need to incorporate these 3 props because they become thematic. And I'd say, what would can you zhuzh it up a bit? And he'd go do his thing, and I was like, like I couldn't hire 10 people to do that,
because he has that eye and that experience.
So I think you take from all of them, and there's no way. And Dan would be like, I just had him play a role in this document, this hybrid doc I'm working on. And I was shooting with him. He's like, hey, you want to get the bounce board? And I was like, yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Is there anything else you think I should be doing right now? Because I will do it, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think like the way they all look at the world, you take that in if you're intelligent and you're like, wow, look at this. Like 100%, even if I don't think I'm probably using that, I am.
Yeah.
And all of the directors, like they're amazing. You learn from them. And I think you have to apply, like you get the opportunity to apply the techniques. You know, technique is really is like a compilation album of like all the things you've ever learned. And you're like, this song needs to be played here and this one here and this one here. And I meet you and you're like doing your thing or going through it or vibing. I'm like, great, give them the Beach Boys or give them, you know, Marilyn Manson. I don't know, whatever, you know, edge them out.
As you've grown with these filmmakers over the last couple of years, you've discovered your voice. How are you seeing your voice kind of evolve and bloom, and what are you seeing as your nugget of knowledge and information that is going to be passed on? Because I remember I was talking a couple episodes ago, you were saying like, I'm finding my voice now. What are you seeing that voice is?
I think
on some level, I think you can't explain. I think you feel it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, I know, and who knows? I mean, I hope I'm not there. I guess that's the bigger thing is like, I feel like I'm just evolving. You know, life dictates a whole bunch of stuff, and everyone comes from different perspectives, and so that, of course, informs how they view the world. And I think if you're open to letting that kind of evolve and not be scared of it, it's very courageous to take these risks and try to do these things in a way. Like, I don't mean courageous like you're a first responder or something, but like to try to choose this as a career and dedicate so much time and go down the path, it's really difficult. And you're going to say no to a lot of things. And I think there's a personal courage in that. And I think there's a personal courage in not letting go of it, even when it's like unpopular or when it's not firing off the way you think it is, or you're getting pressure from the outside world and you're like, I'm going to hold fast. I'm going to hold fast. And I mean, maybe there's something to that, like bending and evolving with the situation, but not breaking and like finding your way back. And I think that's a big part of all creative processes. There's going to be times where you have to compromise things, but if you can keep making sure that you like, even if you just have a tiny thread that's still like on what you think it is, and that's enough to hold on to get you past that little wave, like you will find your way back. And I think that's a part of it. I don't know what my voice is. I don't know what anybody's voice is. I think you just feel it, and I hope it changes, and I think it changes every single day, and I think it changes with every project. Like, I hope all the projects are not the same. I'm doing these projects, and not a one of them is similar, and that's really cool. I'm sure there is me in every single one of them. I approach it just like, you know, like some kind of Friday Night Lights character, you know, like clear eyes, full hearts. I'm just go after it, you know, and
and that's a character for your own story, you know, and I feel like when we talk about voice, people end up seeing it more than we do. And I think for me as a writer, I've had the opportunity to read my work and look at it as a third party and be like, who is this guy? What does he do? And I found that it's a lot more emotional, and it's just a reflection of me. Like all my stories are just me trying to deal with my own problems. But
you're the one.
Yeah. It's all on me. So if you read any of my stuff, you're like, oh, so that's what he's dealing with. But you see, like for me, it's always about like love triangles and like dealing with relationships and like unpacking familial baggage, and it's all like wrapped up in stories like superheroes or like going to Mars, a crime thriller. But it's always about family, and when I look at it, it's heartfelt. I think it's always about the heart. I don't know. Maybe I don't even know what my voice is either, but I see it.
I think it's super cool. I think it's super cool if you're aware of it, and I think people like are true to like. I've watched some amazing people work, and they know what works for them, and they bring the material to them. They don't go to the material, in a way, if that makes sense. Like they make the material work for their vision, and like we all know, it's like Wes Anderson. You know what movie you're going to see in a Wes Anderson. There's no doubt. We can all spot a Wes Anderson movie. I mean, there's Instagram accounts about Wes Anderson walls and shit.
That's a whole thing now.
But like, and that's a big thing. I'm just not that person. I'm a everywhere and nowhere. like they told me stay in your lane, and I was like, I'm scared of that. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for me.
Well, you have 4 projects coming out, and I feel like once we see them, we'll find out a little bit more about what a Gene Gallarano film is going to be like.
Hey, hopefully you don't have any idea it's me, and you're just immersed in the
you're
stories,
not. Yeah.
and you're like, wow, those are amazing stories. Who did it? I mean, I'd like you to be more like, wow, you did this and you do this.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But I feel like when you watch Werner Herzog, you're like, wow, that's a great story, but also that's a very clearly like a Werner Herzog story.
Yeah, but they probably have an app that, like a filter that's like the Werner Herzog filter.
No, I mean like his actual
saying that,
film.
and it's like it turns what you just said into a Werner Herzog film, and he like comes on and says or whatever.
Very German, yeah, very German. Well, where can we hear more about your work? Where can we see your work? And what are you working on? What's the next project coming out for you?
I'll have a horror film coming out at the end of next year. I mean, all things. I need some wood. Make sure all things happen.
Yeah, everybody who's listening,
called The Yeti.
Not Yeti Wood. Knock on
not
wood.
Yeti Wood. The Yeti, not the coolers. The Yeti. It's a horror film. We call it The Revenant in a Box because we're shooting the whole thing on a sound stage in Buffalo, Big Buff, and that'll actually be in some theaters next year, at the end of next year. And then I have this documentary on this beautiful human being, Joshua Ray Walker. And I'm hoping that will be following up right after that. And then I have another documentary which it's one of those, it's just a really sensitive subject. And I don't know what will happen with that. It's going to take its own time.
Well, keep an eye out for
whatever.
Everything coming out next year.
I'll be everywhere.
And nowhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everywhere and Nowhere podcast.
Gene, thank you so much for sharing everything you've learned, everything you've experienced. I think I've learned a lot talking with you, and I hope the folks listening at home have too. And once things come out again, we'll have you come back on. We'll do a retrospective. Yeah, we'll be like, where did you go and where didn't you go?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, man. That's really sweet.
Thanks for everybody who's on the other end of this microphone for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Thank you for joining us at the CFA studio for another series of the Anywood podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you find your podcasts or on YouTube at the Cinematography for Actors YouTube channel. See you next week.
From the CFA network, Cinematography for Actors is bridging the gap through education and community building. Find out about us and listen to our other podcast at cinematographyforactors.com.
Cinematography for Actors Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. For more information on fiscal sponsorship, donations, because we're tax exempt now, so it's a tax write-off, and upcoming education, you can email us at contact@cinematographyforactors.com. Thanks.